Welcome, everybody, to Inside Boxing on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at Grueling Truth. Make sure you check out BetMGM for betting all of the fights. You can check out that link in the description below in the YouTube video. I am your host, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I'd like to welcome in my co-host, author of 3 books you can hit on Amazon, A Few More Rounds, Blood on My Known Book, and Intimate Warfare, The Tale of Ward and Gotti. Help me welcome to the show, John Raspanti. How you doing, John?
Doing great, Mike, and always impressed when you remember, and you've improved every time we've done the show.
I know, and I don't even have it written down, so I'm on a roll. All right,
Wow.
so we saw what was supposed to be a super fight. It wasn't, but we knew that going into it. And, what we've seen in boxing is the balance of risk and reward often keeps young, undefeated fighters from fighting each other. But we had Tank Davis and Ryan Garcia, who decided the reward outweighed the risk. I'm sure Gervonta Davis is glad he did it now. Maybe Ryan Garcia, not so much. But I said nothing would surprise me going into this fight. One thing did. I thought Tank Davis was fast, but I thought Garcia may have been faster. I was wrong because there was actually a point like the 4th or 5th round where you see Tank yell at him, "You're slow." And I mean, to me, Tank was better at every level. Tank is a legit top 10 fighter, pound for pound. What do you think?
Oh yeah, and I thought that going in. I mean, I've thought the guy was underestimated. The problem was his resume wasn't all that great. I had said that he's a very smart fighter. He's very cagey, and he knows what he's doing in there. His technique. I mean, he just outboxed Ryan, and you could see that Ryan. You could see the wheels turning. I think if you were watching closely, he was like, "Oh, I don't know what to do with this guy." I don't know, and he wasn't getting any help from his corner. So not that it would have helped, but Davis is just better at this point, and Ryan. He when minute the second really right away he nullified Garcia's left hook. He didn't know what to do, and then Goosen told him throw some right hands, and he actually connected with some right hands, but it didn't matter. Davis was there. That knockdown in the second round was dynamite. I mean, he threw 3 straight hooks. The third one was what Davis said, "Okay, you're going to throw that hook at me again," and he ducked it, and bam. I mean, that was an moment. That defined the fight right there, as far as I was concerned. And I'm sure we'll get to the ending, which. So yeah, it was Davis.
You must have felt the same way about the ending that I did. But I think coming into the fight, the advantages people thought Garcia had are his biggest assets were his speed, his left hook, and his body work. And the problem was this. Davis matched Garcia's speed. He went to the body much better than Garcia because he knocked him out with it. And his left hook was much better. And I think the thing that people underrated, including myself with Gervonta Davis, was his defensive ability, because I don't remember an actual real left hook going in and being thrown. And I don't remember ever seeing Ryan Garcia try and even get outside of that left foot or right foot on a left-handed boxer.
Yeah, so I mean, he was outsmarted too, and Davis is cagey. His defense is solid, and he had a plan coming in. He knew what he was going to do. He's very respectful of the left hook, and he said that. Look, the guy's a one-dimensional fighter, and maybe not totally one-dimensional, but he sure made him look like it because Ryan didn't have a plan B. The minute that Davis didn't do what his other opponents, I'm speaking of Ryan's opponents, did, he didn't know exactly what to do, and then Davis was just moving around and grabbing him when he had to, and it was just a superb performance in a fight that was, to be honest, underwhelming.
Well, it's kind of what you're going to get, because to me, when you watch Gervonta Davis, it's kind of like watching, and it's no comparison in their ability, which is completely different. And it's kind of like watching Deontay Wilder, where you're on your edge of your seat just because you're waiting for that punch. Now, Davis is worlds better than Deontay Wilder. They're not even comparable. But to me, when you watch Tank fight, you just kind of sit on the edge of your seat and you wait for him to land a left hook, because you know if he does, the fight's probably over.
Yeah, and that's what we were talking about. I mean, to Ryan Garcia's credit, he got up from that wicked hook and he seemed okay. But
he seemed afraid after he got hit.
Well, yeah, he was tentative, and who wouldn't be? I mean, he ducked and bam, he got hit with a really hard, jarring shot and knocked him down, and he was tentative. Sure, he tried to pick it up a little bit, to his credit, but I just think it was like, Mike, I know this rarely happened to you because you rarely played anybody better than you, as you've told me
No,
often.
it's pretty much impossible.
There we go. But there was those few times where you just think to yourself, geez, everything I'm trying is not working against this guy. He just seems to be one step ahead of me. And that's how it was with Tank. He just seemed to see things faster, react faster. And Ryan showed that he wasn't ready. And I don't know if he'll ever be ready for anybody that good if we're talking about a victory.
Well, because I think when we look at this, everybody reacts differently to a loss like this. And I think with Garcia, he's young. I mean, it was a brutal knockout. And we'll talk about the end of it right now. I mean, anytime I know a liver shot will paralyze you.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you can't get up and all that good stuff. But honestly, when I watch this, anytime I see a fighter kind of stand there and stare at the referee and wait till right as he counts 10 and then stand up and act like he's all right, I just believe that's bullshit that he tapped out.
Yeah, like Jersey Joe Walcott did against Rocky Marciano in the second fight, and I'm sure there's other numerous examples. He jumps up right when the referee hits 10, and you're like, come on, you're trying to make it look like you really wanted to get up, So, yeah, I don't think he really wanted to get up. I think he said, look, that's his nose was bleeding. He cussed after he got up, and he knew he could have got up. And in boxing, we're old school and all that, but it's hard to live this kind of stuff down in boxing. I mean, you can argue that, okay, it was a good punch and whatever, but people will be suspicious and then they'll say you're a quitter. And the minute you get that label, that's tough to get past that. He's young and he can pretty much get past it, but this is what a lot of people are going to remember. I mean, I saw all kinds of people saying, well, I'm never going to watch any of his fights. Now that's a little harsh. He's a young guy. He probably learned.
Well, in my defense, I barely ever watched him before anyways, because I thought he was all bullshit. I thought Davis was too, but that's obviously not true. I mean, I didn't think it so much coming into this fight. My question was, how good was Ryan Garcia? And the fact that the resume for Gervonta Davis is not as good as it should be for a man. It seems like he's been at the top of his division for a half a decade to a decade.
Yeah, and see, the other thing I was going to mention earlier is Gervonta Davis. I've seen a lot of his fights, and he's just improved. When his nickname a tank, because that's what he kind of was when he was at a lighter weight. He was just a tank. He didn't move around very much. He just came out for the kill. He's improved. His footwork's better. He's gotten better and better, and he's 28 years old. So you have to say that he's in his prime. Could that happen with Ryan Garcia later? He's got flaws that he's got to work on. And from what I read, Joe Goosen said, you don't train Ryan Garcia, you collaborate with Ryan Garcia. And I'm like, ugh.
What it looked like,
not
too.
Good.
I mean, the denim man didn't get it done here. I've never been overly impressed by the Gooses because to me, their trainers, him, his brother, who I think passed away, but they were guys that, they were in the ring corner for themselves more than if that makes any sense. I think they're very good self-promoters. I don't think that they're going to, make anybody think of Emmanuel Stewart.
Well, and then if you've got a fighter that is going to debate with you, like Freddie Roach said about Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., we know that whole story. He couldn't get him to train. He couldn't even get him to show up at the time that he needed to. And so if you got a fighter like that who already thinks that he knows everything or whatever, this might be the best thing that ever happened to Ryan Garcia. Maybe it'll humble him a little bit because he needs to go back to the drawing board and really work on some things because
but how about this though, John? In a day and age like this, where you can make a lot of money just off TikTok and Instagram, I don't think we see him come back from this. I mean, he may attempt to, he may beat some decent fighters, but in the end, when he steps up, he's still going to lose because if you're 24 years old and you won't listen to a guy who's been in boxing for the last 40 or 50 years.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? And I mean, now I don't think we can question his chin. He's been knocked down twice, but he got up. But I guess we can question his liver.
Yeah. And
he's got a glass liver. Have you ever heard that about anybody?
No, I have not heard that. Yeah. And if you remember, and you probably don't because we know your memory is so poorly, I was questioning the grit of Garcia last week, not trying to sound like a smarty here, but, and I wondered if he got into a situation, he might tap out, not necessarily tap out, but he might not have the desire to get up. Like, see, this sounds harsh, but this is just the way I see it. If that was Gervonta Davis, he'd have got up.
Yeah. He'd have taken a beating and rested around to get to that minute so maybe he could recover.
Yeah, move around, grab him. He'd have done everything he could to try to recover, get himself. But Ryan Garcia just didn't really know. He took a step back and he looked at Garcia at Davis like, what the hell was that? And it was just a real strange ending that had everybody scratching their head and Floyd Mayweather Jr. mocking Oscar De La Hoya in the audience going, see, that's what happened to you. It's like, oh boy, it was surreal.
It's not really what happened to him against Floyd. That was a split decision if Oscar would have just kept on
he's talking about
the last 3 rounds.
He was talking about Bernard Hopkins, what happened in the Hopkins fight. That's what he was referring to.
But also I find it weird that after that fight, Oscar and Bernard went into business. So we'll just leave it at that.
No, well, you can be friends after you battle. I mean, that's
sure.
Gotti and Ward.
Not the same thing, no.
Not the same thing.
Gotti and Ward were not on the same level as Bernard and Oscar. And
no,
I love Gotti and Ward, but
in their respect, they were like brothers. Researching those guys for years, that was real between them. They were really good friends, and there wasn't anything phony or whatever. They were the legitimate. They were the real deals.
Well, how about this? Since we're talking phony, let's keep talking about Oscar De La Hoya and Bernard Hopkins, because a lot of fans were kind of disturbed that those two were not by Ryan's side after his knockout loss. Oscar's excuse was he said his security team advised him to leave because of the death threats. Now, this is what Oscar said via social media. He said, my security team told me, boss, we got to get the F out of here because I received death threats. You guys don't know this, but I received death threats throughout the whole week. And they said it was simply too dangerous. So we got out of there. Now, the problem with that, if he received them all week, why did he go to the weigh-in? Why did he go to the fight?
It was just ridiculous.
He wore a see-through shirt for the weigh-in.
I don't even want to see that. So
I've already shown you. But
I don't want. Not again, please. I think he took 24 hours to come up with. He thought that was a good excuse for not going there. The real reason people are saying is because they were embarrassed what happened to Ryan Garcia. I mean, I don't think that was that bad that they shouldn't show their faces. You saw what Bernard Hopkins said. He said, well, we didn't want the press conference to be about us. And as we know, they always want everything to be about them. So that's ridiculous. And anyway, even if it was, if someone said, well, did that remind you of your fight? All he would have had to say was, no, this is about Ryan Garcia. Ask him questions. And that would have stopped it all. So Bernard Hopkins' excuse was pretty ridiculous too. So I don't know. And then Dan Goossen, talking about the promoter, Joe Goossen, not even there. That was really alarming to me. That was, I
said, I'm pretty sure that they had a denim sale at TJ Maxx that he had to get to because they closed at midnight.
So yeah, okay, that might make sense because, as we know, he does like that style. But I don't know, legitimately, in all seriousness, I've never seen that where the trainer has not been around the fighter, especially after a loss. I'm sure it happens sometimes, but when we've got nobody, they didn't have Eric Gomez, the matchmaker and president of Golden Boys, so he was there, but the big shots weren't there, and it was not a good look. And I'm sure Ryan Garcia was aware of it and bothered. I was like, okay, it's like Angelo Dundee said, Mike. After you lose, you look in the locker room and see who's there. That tells you who your real friends are, and I don't know. It was startling to me. I had to check on it numerous times because I couldn't believe that they didn't show for that. I just thought that was classless.
Yeah, and you know what? Put it like this: if Ryan Garcia would have won that fight, do you think Oscar De La Hoya would have been there? I mean, Bernard Hopkins' excuse, Oscar said, was because he was banned by PBC.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because when he touched him, people that thought he was, putting cream and clear or whatever they call it on it. And I did see somebody post that on Facebook, I believe it was, at one of the boxing sites, but I don't think anybody believed that. I mean, maybe PBC did ban him because PBC's usually got their head so far up their ass, they don't know what they're doing either. So this whole thing was crap. The undercard I thought was crap. I mean, if you're going to pay $60 to $90 according to where you're watching it, whether you're a DAZN subscriber or not, I mean, they've got to stop, especially in fights like this. You got to put something on the undercard.
Yeah, and see, they don't care because I guess the arena was sold out and there was a large amount of interest in this fight. And they are all talking about it, and
Yeah.
it's like, what does that say?
Isn't that a time to showcase a boxer? You know, a younger boxer that's
Used to
coming
be.
up. It used to be, or they would put Cordina and Rahkimov as the main lead into the fight. A fight like that, which we're going to talk about now. Well, we'll talk about in a minute. Where do you think Gervonta Davis goes from here? Because it may be jail. We don't know yet.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to be mean. I don't know what
Yeah.
happened there. I don't know if he did it. I don't know any of that crap. So I think it's May 5th. He's scheduled to appear in
Coming
court
up, yeah.
after pleading, and he pleaded guilty to a November 5th, 2020 hit and run that left a pregnant woman and 3 other victims. And there was no agreement in place on what Davis' sentencing would be. He pleaded guilty. It's not known what, if any, jail time awaits Davis, nor how that time will affect his career, John. So if we set that aside, I would think if Devin Haney beats Vasil Lomachenko, that's who I'd want to fight, because Devin Haney, he's got all the belts.
Yeah, and he's comfortable at 135. You saw Davis; he was making a joke of how easy it was for him to make 135. So that seems to be his natural. He moved up to 140, as we know, and won some.
Hey, wait a second. He weighed in at like 135.1, didn't he?
Yeah, well, that's fine. I don't even think he had to kill himself to make it. I
He'd
guess
had to take a shit though to make weight.
But he went up to 140 and won that bogus title. So we won't even talk about that. But I think 135 is his best weight. And that would be the fight. I mean, Shakur Stevenson and him will be a really good fight. Shakur Stevenson and Devin Haney would be a good fight. Lomachenko, we think he's on the back 9. So beating Haney would be amazing at this point, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and unfortunately, because I really like him.
Dude, I think at that way, even Lomachenko at his best would have had difficulties with Haney. I think Haney's that good. And I think Haney Davis is a great fight. And my only question is, can Davis hit him with the left hook? Because he's not going to be attacked by Haney the way Ryan Garcia attacked him. And Davis likes to sit back and pick his shots. Devin Haney, I think, would be happy to just run circles around him and jab his ears off all night and get a decision.
Yeah, Davis is another thing too that we talked about last week. He's a really dynamite counterpuncher. So I would say he probably will hit him. Linares hit Haney, wobbled him. So there's that. And Davis is, like I said, he's very cagey. He'd probably come in with a totally different plan. Okay, he wants to box and run around. I'll pursue him and move and dip and all these kind of things. He's got a lot of game, Mike. So yeah, I would make Haney the favorite, but Davis is going to be right there, and
he's a live dog. To me, that's a 7-5 fight.
Oh yeah,
7-5 odds, 8-5 odds, and actually Davis might be the favorite after this. It's according to what Haney looks like against Lomachenko, probably.
Yeah, and that's May 20th, right? So that's less than a month.
Because let's face it, beating George Kambosos is not the same thing.
No, we all knew that was a foregone conclusion that he would win, but still, it was impressive. He went there, he did everything they said, just like Garcia did. He went to the guys. Well, he didn't go to Baltimore, but still, he went to Australia twice and beat him twice. I mean, that's impressive to do that, and he beat him easily. I mean, it really wasn't even competitive.
All right, let's go on to what was the fight of the weekend, maybe the fight of the year. It's one of the 2 or 3 best fights I've seen all year, and the other ones were probably lower level fights. But we have Joe Cordina beating Rahkimov. Absolutely great fight. This is what you want to see when you watch boxing. Unfortunately, we don't get to see it that often. But Joe Cordina, slick combinations, helped him earn a split decision victory over, I'm not even going to attempt to say Rakimov's first name, to regain the IBF junior lightweight world title at the Cardiff International Arena in Wales on Saturday. And fighting in front of his home fans, Cordina won by the scores of 115-112, 114-113. And then there's always got to be one dumbass judge who had it 116-111 for Rahkimov. I thought it could have went either way, but it wasn't a 116-111 fight for Rahkimov. I actually had Cordina winning the fight 115-112.
Yeah, that fight snuck up on me, Mike. Bill Tibbs, who writes those great articles for Max Boxing, he wrote a preview about it, and I read it, and I went, sounds interesting. And then I read a little bit about Cordina, and I remember that he had been stripped of his title after he broke his hand before he was going to fight Rahkimov. So he was motivated, Mike. And motivation can only take you so far. But this guy is also talented. So you got both of those things And he brought those into the ring for the fight, and he really wanted it. You know how we say how bad you want it? He really wanted it badly because he was willing to walk through fire. And then the Russian, I mean, he took a pummeling. His eye was all swollen up. He came back, and after it looked like the fight was pretty much going to be stopped, maybe around round 7 or 8, because Cordina was doing so well, but he just rallied back, and even though he was exhausted, and Freddie Roach was saying, you want to continue, and he'd stagger back to his corner. I mean, we're talking about guts here, and that's the same thing I said in an article coming to the Grueling Truth. That's what we want in boxing. We don't want guys to take a knee and look up and shake their head. We want it because boxing is the ultimate macho sport. You know, if you're going in there to win and you're risking, try to win. Don't just say, okay, I give. And neither of these guys were going to do that. They were fighting as hard as they could, and they had everything going and everything on the line. And you're right. It was a great fight. I mean, I was amazed when I was watching. I was going, wow, what a great fight this is.
So where would you rank Cordina in the junior lightweight division right now?
You know, hard to say because I saw highlights of him, but that was the first time I saw him fight. All I know is that what I saw of his highlights is he's a very talented guy. He's 31, not necessarily. Usually guys that are lighter weights maybe start aging a little quicker. And this was a hard fight, but he's going to give anybody he fights trouble because of his multi-talent. And he has power. You know, that lead right hand, which Floyd Mayweather threw so well, and Muhammad Ali turned it into perfection during his career. He knocked out the Japan title holder to win the title, or the Japan calendar to win the title, and he nailed the Russian numerous times with that lead right hand. He's a very clever, quick, and he hits pretty hard, and he's got huge, and moxie.
Yeah, so and he can take a punch.
Yes, and he's got a good chin. You're right, and he did. He took some wicked punches from a guy who can punch a little. So he's in the top 5 for sure. IBF title, considered lesser, obviously, than some of the other ones, even though.
I'm not even talking titles. I'm just talking about everybody in the division. Shakur Stevenson's the best.
Oh, yeah. You can't beat him.
I think it's possible that Cordina is the second best. I would take him to beat Jamil Herring.
He could, that's what I mean. That'd be a toss-up fight. They're all really good fights except against Shakur. Shakur is going to be 135.
Shakur's going to move up. Yeah. So, Shakur's going to be out of the way. So, I think Cordina, outside of Shakur, him and Herring is a toss-up fight to me. Yeah. But Cordina's as good as anybody I've seen in that division outside of Stevenson.
Yeah, Emmanuel Navarrete is at. I think he's at 130 also, right? And he's the awkward. Is he at 130?
Navarrete is there. You've got guys like Robeson. I'm not sure how to say. Garcia from Brazil. Robert Gutierrez from Venezuela. Ogawa Kenichi, the guy from Japan. Oshak Foster, guys like that. I mean, if Cordina stays at this weight class, I think that he could end up being an undisputed champion.
Well,
I like him a lot.
Yeah, me too. And Navarrete would be a really good matchup because he's awkward as hell. He hits hard. He's gutsy as hell too. And that would probably be another war between those two guys. So
but I also think this, though. I want to see him and Rahkimov again.
That would be great. A rematch definitely should happen. I didn't hear anybody talking about it afterwards, but it seems like a no-brainer. A second fight between them.
Well, no-brainer in boxing promoters is pretty much.
Yeah, they have no-brainers, right? So they have no brains. So yeah, it's just a great fight, and anybody who didn't see it, please go watch it if you can, because it was what boxing is supposed to be, and why I've loved the sport all my life is because of what those guys showed.
All right. Now, I'm going to bring up a couple things. And the main one is this. This really surprised me while watching the fight, the Showtime documentary coming out on Andre Ward. I didn't think that was going to happen. I mean, just because Andre Ward, for some reason, most people I know think he was overrated. I think from 2000 to now, I think that he is one of the top 5 fighters that boxing has seen in this last almost quarter of a century. And I actually, this is why I never write a list of my top 10 or top 20, 21st century fighters, because I don't want to get death threats like Oscar De La Hoya.
Yeah.
But I think Andre Ward was the best fighter of this century so far.
Yeah, and having the pleasure of watching him and watching him spar and train and work and getting to know him a little bit. I miss those days huge, Mike, because it was just a pleasure. He was so committed. He is what you're supposed to be. And to his credit, a lot of people mocked him for his religious beliefs and everything, and he would not give in. He would not be what so many guys are. They just say, I'll be a pompous jerk if that sells more tickets. He would not do it. And then his boxing ability, you talk about a guy with grit. You know, I mean,
if you Kovalev fight, I thought
Yeah.
Kovalev did edge him, but the second time they fought, he destroyed Kovalev.
Yeah.
And if you look at his career, I mean, he had some management difficulties, which made him step away for a year or two. Yeah, he had injuries. But if you look at his career and you go and look at who he beat, and I don't think people do that with him, because when you look at it, Edison Miranda, and that was in 2009. Edison Miranda was pretty good. He won pretty much an easy split decision, maybe lost a round. He goes and he stops Mikkel Kessler, and he was dominating that fight. I think all three judges had it 98-92. He dominated Alan Green, won every round. Sakio Bika, who's a tough dude. He won pretty much every round against Bika. He fights Arthur Abraham, unanimous decision, wins almost every round against him. He fights Carl Froch in Atlantic City, and two of the judges had it 7-5. I don't think it was that close. I think it was like a 9-3 fight. Yeah, broken hand. And Carl Froch was a damn good fighter.
Yeah.
Then he fights Chad Dawson. He knocks him out in 2012. Sullivan Barrera, who was a very good contender, he pretty much shut him out. And then you got the Kovalev. The first fight could have won either way.
Yes.
Second fight, he turned around, dominated the fight. There's not many guys that have. Let's say Floyd Mayweather doesn't have a resume like that. I mean, he doesn't. Not guys like Carl Froch in their prime, Chad Dawson, Arthur Abraham, Sakio Bika, Mikkel Kessler, Edison Miranda. I mean, I don't see any guys that are washed up there. And maybe Kovalev was the second time they fought, because the first fight, Ward may have taken it out of him those last 4 rounds. But I think Andre Ward gets slept on big time, and I'm really glad they're doing this documentary.
Yeah, he definitely deserves it. And yeah, he wasn't the same fighter when he fought Kovalev as he was before when he fought Kessler. I think that was his prime. I think the injuries took things out of him, and the delays, laying off like that always hurts a fighter. I don't care how much they're sparring. But the thing about the first fight, and he might have lost, you're right. Actually, I had him losing, to be honest. Both times I watched it, I had him losing by point. What really was impressive, though, Mike, is he was getting not necessarily dominated, but he got knocked down, as everybody remembers. And he probably lost 3 or the first 4 rounds or whatever. But Virgil Hunter gave one of the best speeches I've ever heard a trainer give his fighter. You don't want to go home without that. And I mean, hell, I got inspired listening to him. And they've known each other since Andre was like 7 years old. So they trust each other and everything. He started coming, and when he started going to the body, you could see that Kovalev was not liking it, and he rallied down the stretch. So it could have easily been a draw. I think that would have been more fair in a sense, a draw, and then they would have fought the rematch. But his guts right there, that showed. It's like people said about Muhammad Ali when he lost to Joe Frazier. They thought he was a pretty boy, couldn't take it, and he took a punishing, got knocked down and got up, and a lot of people who didn't like him changed their opinion about Muhammad after that. It's like, God, he's really a tough dude. Well, there was never any question for me. I saw Andre Ward in the gym, soft-spoken, but beating the crap out of guys who got out of line a little bit. They're inspiring. He's a tough guy, and he's got that competitive spirit, that gritty spirit that when he gets in the deep waters, he's just going to fight you harder than ever. And that's what he did to Kovalev. In the second fight, he just took him out.
Yeah, so once again, I love Andre Ward. I think he was better than anybody that fought in this century. But it also will tell you how this century has gone.
True, and that's keeping it very real.
And that's not ripping on Andre Ward. It's just
no.
Andre Ward to me is not it's super middleweight but he's not at middleweight. He's not at light heavyweight, which is the other issue. Well, he was a light heavyweight at the end.
He was. I mean, think about it. He's a gold medalist. He only had 32 fights, but he never lost. Like Nassim Richardson says there in the trailer that
and he's got 6 or 7 high quality wins.
He does, and I saw quite a few of them. The Miranda fight was a great fight. Alan Green was saying he couldn't take it on the inside. He couldn't fight on the inside, and Andre Ward just took him, backed him into the ropes and just beat him up for him. It's like,
You know what
Don't
I'd
tell
like
him
to
you can't
see?
do it.
I'd have liked to seen Ward go to Denmark and beat Kessler. I
That's
think
one of the
that would
things.
have ended every question about him.
Yes, that is. I was going to say that. That's one of the things about him is he didn't go overseas, and he kept talking about doing it. He could have fought Froch again in a rematch, and it never happened. And that's what people will point at, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah, but it's also people that, don't have to worry about whether they can remember their kids' names 20 years after they retire. Because
And
Andre
remember,
Ward didn't, like he said in that documentary, they showed a thing. Boxing didn't retire him. He retired from boxing.
yeah, and the other thing is, Mike, is so impressive about him is when I spoke to him, he was barely 25, and he had it all mapped out. He knew he was going to be out of there before he was like 32, 33, he said, and he was done when he was 32. So, when somebody 33, when you do that, when you say it and you do it and stay away, and he says he's missed it really badly. He's thought about coming back a few times, and he's staying out. Thank God. He's 39 now. He just turned 39 in February.
Yeah, he's been away too long now.
Yeah, and I mean, he left a great legacy. People will always, there will always be critics, but he was great to watch, great to be around. I miss those days. That was the prime period of when I was writing that. I loved it.
Well, that was what, the super middleweight Super 6 tournament?
Yeah, that was great.
Which, I mean, all those guys were top level fighters, except for Alan Green. But I think he got in because somebody got hurt, wasn't it?
Yeah, there was an injury. I think, was it Taylor from Arkansas that was going to be in
Jermaine
it.
Taylor.
Yeah, he was in it, and he had to step away because of an injury or whatever. But yeah, this just shows you too, real quickly, is that a tournament type style like that, it really is good for boxing. If they should,
the World Boxing Super Series, that basically made it so all boxing fans knew who Alexander Usyk was too.
True.
And also Inoue.
Well, there you go. So some brainy promoter ought to, well, maybe that's an oxymoron, ought to come up with another tournament idea.
For sure.
Yeah, I know Richard Schaefer wanted to do those, but his company went out of business a few months ago. So he tried a number of them, and it didn't really catch fire that he was hoping it would. And right now in boxing, it's hard to find something that you can have the crossover appeal that we're talking about, like this fight with the social media sensation.
Yeah, but I don't think there's really crossover appeal with that. It's social media sensation, but how many people are going to watch it? Do we know pay-per-view buys on it yet?
We don't know the numbers. People were predicting it was going to have really big numbers. We'll see. I haven't heard anything yet. So if it does, nobody's bragging about it yet. But,
they're trying to cook the books to get the numbers up right now.
Cook the books. They always cook the books. They always lie about the numbers. So we'll see. We'll see what it is.
I'm going to punch it in real quick to see if
anything
came out today.
I haven't seen anything.
Yeah, I don't see anything yet. They said the live gate is like $10 million or something.
Okay, well, it probably did pretty well because there was some interest, but more interest than usual.
Well, Oscar, who wears see-through shirts, De La Hoya, said that he predicted the fight would break 2.4 million buys.
Yeah.
He said it would be like him and Floyd, which it was not.
No. And Oscar, who we both, I know we've talked about it off air, admired as a fighter.
But he's one of those guys that like Larry Holmes, Livingstone Bramble, Sugar Ray Leonard. Those are all guys that I hated at the time they fought. When they retired, though, I realized, they were pretty damn good. The problem is with Oscar De La Hoya, I think he was pretty damn good. But now I went the other way. I almost can't stand him so much that I don't really care.
Yeah, and when I talked to him years ago, and he told me he wasn't going to be a typical promoter. He was going to be all about his fighters, and so I don't know what's happened. Did he sell his soul to the devil? Did he sell his soul to his outfits?
Most of them do.
Unfortunately, I mean, he should have more money than most everybody except Sugar Ray Leonard. You would think that he would stick.
He probably got more than Sugar Ray Leonard because he was fighting later on. He was making more money.
You would, well, Sugar Ray still got his first
dime.
So.
Leonard Hearns, I think, were paid like $5 million each, weren't they?
Yeah, and Leonard saved pretty much every penny, from what I understand.
Could you imagine what Leonard and Hearns would have got paid if they were both in their prime and fighting in 2023? Or Ali Frazier, or Holmes and Cooney. Or Holmes and Cooney might have been $100 million each. But not in this time, because boxing has killed itself.
Yes.
Over the next 40 years to put it to where it is a regional sport.
It is.
And you very rarely, it's just like everybody freaked out about the LSU and Iowa women's basketball game drawing 10, 11 million people. But it did that 10, 15 years ago when UConn and Tennessee would play, and you had Gino Auriemma against, Pat Summitt. The numbers were even bigger back then. The problem is this: you might be able to have one big event, but the big thing is, can it sustain? Back then, you had Holmes Cooney in 1982 on pay-per-view. You had huge numbers for Randall Tex Cobb and Larry Holmes after that because it was on network TV. Right now, I mean, they don't understand. Without network TV and without people that know how to promote their boxers, I mean, hell, if you remember Bill Caton and Jim Jacobs, the big story of how they promoted Tyson was like after his first 10 knockouts or so, they made a bunch of videotapes of the knockouts and then sent them to every newscaster in the damn country. I mean, right now, it's easily accessible. It wasn't back then. I think that it gets really hard to promote any sport that's not football anymore.
Yeah, it's just so different. I know that was it Premier Boxing? They did some weekend shows, like kind
And
of
they did good numbers.
Yeah, and they shelved it for whatever reason, because that was what made boxing more popular, because they had a variety of things. They had Friday night fights, they had the Saturday CBS Spectacular with Tim Ryan and Gil Clancy back in the 80s, and it had that crossover appeal because other people would discover it at that time. And now it's just either pay-per-view or DAZN or one of those guys.
Yeah, and hasn't it been proven that pay-per-view is not sustainable?
Yeah.
They
keep doing it, and it's got to be greed. They keep thinking they're going to hit the jackpot on one of these. This was not a pay-per-view fight. This would have been.
You know what, though, John? If you would have made this a pay-per-view fight at $25 a piece, you'd have had a couple million.
Well, now that's smart business, because if you had cut it in half and made that deal, it's like the gas prices. Why doesn't the guy in the corner, instead of having it at $4.29, cut it to $3.79 for a week?
Well, I think it's a little different. I think that they're mandated to charge a certain amount.
Well, that's true, but just the idea of you charge less on something, but you can make it up because other people go, wow, only $25, even though Tyson Spinks was $24.99 when I saw it back in the day. But that's relative, that was 100 years ago. So,
dude, I saw Holmes and Cooney for $15, and I think I saw Ali Holmes for $10.
Didn't get that one.
But like 10 million people bought the damn thing. Yes. So, I mean, it ends up being $100 million. So I don't understand this. To me, I would rather sell it for $25 and get 3 million people to pay me $25 than to get 500,000 or 1 million people to pay $80. Just like because even if the numbers are just double and you would have made more money charging, you still had other people see the fighters that wouldn't normally see the fighters because it was cheaper. So in the long run, it's still going to pay off. I mean, to me, right now, shit, why wouldn't you go ahead and just make Gervonta Davis and Devin Haney if Haney beats Lomachenko? Make it for November and try to build momentum with Davis or with Haney, whoever wins, and then you've got something. But here, we know what's going to happen. If Davis doesn't end up in jail, he'll take off till about December, and he'll fight a guy that's a fringe top 10 guy. And then next year, all year, they'll talk about those two fighting. And in the year after that, well, they'll talk about those two fighting. And before you know it, one of them's lost and the fight's shit now. I mean, look at Wilder and Joshua, how long they tore that up. Never came off. One of them gets knocked out. The other one gets knocked out. Now the only people that care are people that live in England. And it's not a knock on them. It's because English boxing fans are great boxing fans, unlike over here. All right. So Deontay Wilder, if you have him fight in what's his home state, Alabama, he couldn't sell that out, if you remember. I think it seated like 15,000. He got 9,000 there. I mean, you put Anthony Joshua in a 100,000 seat stadium to fight me or you, 100,000 people will show up.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's just, they're great boxing fans over there.
Yes.
Over here, not so much.
No.
I mean, if you saw the crowd and the atmosphere for Cordina and Rahkimov.
Oh, I loved it.
You used to get that kind of stuff here. Remember when Ray Mancini would fight in like his high school gym on the way up? The place would be packed. It'd be going nuts. Billy Costello, the old junior welterweight champion. Yeah. because I remember CBS showed like 3 or 4 of his fights. He fought, I think, Leroy Haley, Saul Mambi, guys like that. But there's a lot of guys you can look back, and when they fought in their hometown, it was packed. The atmosphere was great. And when you see something like that, it makes you want to see it again. But we don't see anything like that now, because now, if you think you're a big time fighter, well, you got to fight in Vegas, you got to fight in LA, or you're going to fight in New York. I mean, there's no more, well, the lightweight champion of the world's from Youngstown, so we're going to go fight there. And you could put it in a high school football field, build a bunch of bleachers, and 30,000 people will show up.
Well, it's like when Carlos Palomino fought Armando, my guy, at the Olympic. They fought at the Olympic where they both started their career. I mean, that was a natural, and they only had 10,000. They would have sold 40,000 probably, but they could only sell 10,000 because that's what it held, and it sold out in minutes. That was 2 LA guys going at it. It's just different than it used to be, and it's unfortunate because it could do better if these guys made a little of an effort. And you're right, the Brit fans, I mean, they crack me up singing the Neil Diamond song all the time when they do it. That's now a tradition.
No, it's not Neil Diamond, is it? Sweet Caroline?
Yes, Sweet Caroline cracks me up every time they do it. They're all singing together.
That song, no, I'll tell you. They need to get a new song over there.
Well, they seem to love it, and they've turned it into traditions. I'm smiling about it now. Probably, I don't know how many of them are in the bag by the time they're singing it, but
they all are
humorous. Yeah, they all are. So it's just humorous. And yeah, speaking of Joshua and Wilder, I guess the rumors are that, right? I know rumors probably won't happen. They're going to fight in Saudi Arabia in December. I know. But, tell me you won't tune in to watch it. I will. I'll admit it. I'll watch it.
Joshua Wilder, I will, just to watch one of them get knocked out. Maybe both of them if they hit each other.
Knock out each other. Now, that would be funny.
That would be an interesting fight just to see. Since Joshua's afraid and will run away, he would get knocked out. I think if Joshua was to attack Wilder, he would actually knock Wilder out, because I don't think Wilder can move him backwards. But I don't know that Joshua has for lack of a better term, the testicular fortitude. That's pretty good, huh? Testicular fortitude to actually go after Wilder. Because that is my question. I mean, my question with Wilder is, we always question his skill because he's not a very skilled boxer. But you can't question he's hard after the Fury fights.
No. And he'll go after Joshua for sure. He will go
and Joshua's heart can be questioned.
Yes. And Joshua's better. I think he's better. Not saying a hell of a lot, but he's a better fighter. But
technically, he's a better fighter. Yeah.
Yeah, he should be able to step inside, duck instead, like I could do it, and step inside and nail Wilder. He'd knock him out, but will he engage?
I think if the fight was about the time he fought Klitschko, I think he'd have won it. I think if they fight now, I think Wilder probably beats him. I hope he doesn't, because I can't stand Wilder, but I can't stand Joshua either, so I don't really care who wins. And if they put him on the undercard of Fury Usyk, I'm in. I'll pay for it.
That would be a super fights. Those would be a double bill super fights. Super as far as heavyweights now.
Well, I would say this: Fury Usyk would be a super fight.
Yes.
Because you've got 2 undefeated men that both have a claim on the heavyweight championship of the world, and the style matchup. You got a guy that's 6'9". I guess a guy that's 6'2",
6'2", 6'3".
Yeah, he's outweighed by 60 or 70 pounds, but he is a guy that really, if Usyk was to beat Fury, he goes down as an all-time great fighter, I would think.
For sure.
I mean, because he cleaned out a cruiserweight division that the only time I think it was any better would have been, and I don't even know if it was, but I think the division Holyfield cleaned out, I think, was a little bit better, because I think guys like Carlos De Leon are way underrated. And I mean, Dwight Muhammad Qawi is not underrated. I think Dwight Muhammad Qawi was a great fighter.
He was.
And to beat him in your 12th fight, and then you beat Carlos De Leon, who'd been fighting for 15 years and fought heavyweight contenders, had been the cruiserweight champion. Ricky Parkey, not so much. But, I mean, to me, they're the 2 best cruiserweights that ever lived. If he was to beat Tyson Fury, pound for pound, he's an all-time great fighter, I think.
Yeah, and what Holyfield did was so impressive, because that was a war. If you remember that fight, the first fight was a war. He beat him easily.
Actually, when you're talking about Holyfield, when you say remember that fight was a war, through my head, I went, which one are you talking about?
Yeah, in that division. Yeah, and that's right. He fought in a ton of those, but that was really, he really had to go dig down in that one to beat Dwight Muhammad Qawi, because you know how tough he was. What he did to Matthew Saad Muhammad broke my heart, but he was just a really, really gritty, tough guy too. So yeah, all props obviously to Evander Holyfield for that. But that was a different time than now, you know. But Usyk is the road warrior to me. He goes to everybody's hometown or whatever.
Yeah, he don't care where the fight is.
Yeah, he'll fight wherever, and that's old style. That's you gotta like that, or you at least gotta respect it.
Yeah, it'd be really nice if he could get a hold of some of those Evander steroids so he could start knocking people out and make it a little bit more interesting.
All right.
You know it was true, John. He's one of my favorite fighters of all time. I know what happened, but still, I'm good with it because I know pretty much everybody does anymore, and back then too.
Yeah, so. I'm not disagreeing with you, am I? So it's like, ugh.
All right, John. Anything else before we wrap it up?
No, some good stuff. Well, not Ryder and Canelo. I'm not looking forward to that one. But on the 20th,
we're going to do a show about it though, just to see if Canelo fans will actually watch and do.
Okay, that's fun. That's a nice angle.
Because actually, Tank and Garcia, we did really good numbers, way better than Joe Joyce did.
Yeah. I think I saw that and went, whoa, look at that! Like tripled the numbers. So there you go. But we got Lomachenko and Haney coming up. We got Katie Taylor fighting. She's moving up to 140. Both on
same. She's fighting, I think, Chantel Cameron, who's actually a pretty good fighter. So that'll be a good fight.
May 20th, and then Teofimo's coming back in June against Josh Taylor. That's a heck of a matchup. So there's some good fights coming up, and there's some I'm sure that before that might not be getting the notice they deserve. But hey,
I don't know that there
didn't get it. Yeah, exactly. So
I don't know that there's a lot during May. So we'll come back next week to a show. Maybe we'll do this. We'll count down me and John's top 10 pound for pound fighters today.
It's fine. Whatever you want to do.
The only unfair thing is my list is already out on the internet, so you can go look at it, pick it through, and just destroy me next week.
I won't destroy you. You know,
I might change my mind on my entire top 10 by then too.
You probably would, and that's good. I can take crib notes like I used to in class and go look over somebody's. What did he write there? Number 8. Okay, so
because really, I mean, almost any time I do a list like that, as soon as I'm done, I think, man, I should have put him there instead of there. So
second guessing, huh? Yeah.
But 6 months later, I'd write it again, and we get a bunch of reads again. So it works out all right.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Check it out. Because I'm going to go check it out now, Mike. So you got my interest. So everybody out there should go check it out.
And check out Amazon. Search John Raspanti. You've got a few more rounds, which you wrote with Jerry Fitch, the great Cleveland boxing historian.
Yes.
That is a absolutely great book.
Thank you.
Starts off good, and I think it was the Tony Zales what it started off with.
Yeah, he was great friends with Tony Zales. Great story.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great story. Jerry is even older than John, which means he knows everybody. I mean, yeah. And also, you've got Blood on My Notebook, which are an anthology of articles from John throughout his career as a boxing writer. Great book. And then, of course, Intimate Warfare with you and Dennis Taylor, which, I mean, the description on the rounds, you don't even have to watch the fight. You can just read it. It's the same damn thing. And you see how good it is. There's a lot of background stories there that are really good also. So make sure you go check out all those books. Make sure you check out Max Boxing. John, you're still the managing editor there, correct?
Yeah.
I guess I didn't have to bring that one up.
No, that's fine.
And remember, if you're going to bet on the fights, go to the link to the description of the video for BetMGM. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit the bell notification button on our YouTube channel, and give us a follow at Grueling Truth. But for now, for John Raspanti, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been watching and listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.